Ingo, can you hear us? We cannot hear you.
Sorry for that.
Now we can hear you. How are you? Where are you in the world?
I'm in Berlin. I was actually meant to be in Dubai because I was there last week, but then for personal reasons I had to fly home. So sorry for that, but very good that we have technology. So hi to Dubai.
Exactly, that's the beauty of technology. I have my dear friends who are joining the panel, and I've known them for so long. Nicole, especially you, we go back to what, like, I don't know, 15 years? It's actually...
Well, maybe a little bit less than that, but anyway, you look as stunning as ever. You know, delighted to be with this wonderful panelists here today.
And Baiba is joining us as well, and we will... you have a microphone there if you like? So we all have a microphone, and if you want to take a couple of minutes, because you had such an amazing career, we'll never do you justice introducing you. Do you want to take a couple of minutes introducing yourself, just in case somebody doesn't know you?
Hello to everyone. My name is Baiba Broka. I'm a financial legal advisor to blockchain projects as well. And coming from traditional capital markets and being also involved in all the investment infrastructure planning and advising. And I'm member of the governing council of the International Private Law Unification Institute, which is intergovernmental organization UNIDROIT, based in Rome in Italy. And this organization main task is to adopt conventions for capital markets. And lately, so last 2 years, we have a new challenging initiative that we are working. It's to create a guidelines document that would be helpful for national legislators, and it's called Digital Assets and Private Law, where we would like to, as a more like private law experts, where we would like to help regulate not only a blockchain ecosystem from regulatory aspects, how to set up the entities, how to license, but also to cover proprietary rights, contractual aspects, insolvency aspects, something this is a dynamic side of the blockchain industry. And at the same time, I'm an advisor for some of the projects of crypto exchanges, Lio Trade, Lio Pay, and others.
Awesome. Please.
Great. Now, I'd love to also say a few words about myself. So my name is Nicole Purin, and I'm currently Deputy General Counsel at OKX, which is one of the largest crypto exchanges. I started my career in London in traditional finance, and I've switched on to the dark side, as we say, just a couple of months back. But I've been very, very interested in the sector for many years, and I do have a strong belief that we are undergoing such a transformation, and there's going to be an integration between the traditional financial system, in my personal opinion, and the digital assets world. So I'm delighted to be here, and looking forward to this panel. Thank you.
That's awesome. I'm so glad you joined the dark side, because we need more lawyers. Crypto industry needs more lawyers that actually understand what crypto is, because there's so little understanding. It's actually, will bring us to tears. Do you mind, ladies, starting, what is a digital identity? Before we discuss it, I always like establishing the definitions. What are we going to discuss? So what is a digital identity? What is a physical identity? And how are they different?
So I think first of all, the challenge is that digital economy requires digital identity. So this is something, because we figure it out that in digital economy, so the traditional verification of the persons is actually not appropriate one. It's impossible even. And that's why we see that, over the development of technologies, we have created some kind of mixture of what is a physical, biometrical data, how to combine it with a technology that we can see that someone can verify the person, that it's cyber secure, that it's transparent, that it's, there's some of these aspects that actually I think it's a next level of identity verification. So we want to bring everything that is already proven to be good.
Yes, no, absolutely. I agree with you. Clearly, from a very kind of basic conceptual perspective, physical identity, just to be kind of very, very basic about it, would be a, physical hard copy passport, for example. So hard copies documentation, which were used, historically, and then as we transition to the digital world, clearly all of these documents are now available online in digital format. And it is actually very, very interesting, because one of the point I also wanted to highlight is that having worked in traditional finance, is actually very peculiar that I'm not going to name clearly the institutions that I was working at previously, but they did not accept, as part of the KYC process, they actually didn't accept digital documents. They wanted physical document certified copies to be sent across as part of the KYC process.
Was it like last month or 20 years ago?
Well, actually, it wasn't 20 years ago. I'm not, let's say it wasn't so far off ago, and so that really makes you understand that there are so many still, differences in approach within organizations. As we are transitioning into a digital world, there are still a lot of, let's say, old-fashioned processes that, of course, need to be replaced. This is something I just wanted to kind of highlight because of my experience and what I've seen.
And we got Ingo back. Hi, Ingo. Glad to see you back. Do you mind taking a couple of minutes introducing yourself, just in case there are some people who don't know you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Ingo. I'm the founder of Kill Protocol. Kill Protocol is a blockchain, level 1 blockchain, a part of the Polkadot ecosystem, and we do nothing but digital identity. So we do DIDs, which are decentralized identifiers, and we do verifiable credentials, which represent the things that you know from the physical world as passports, driver's licenses, university degrees, and stuff like that.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. I did not know that. Maybe you can tell us what is a digital identity in your point of view, because you are creating that product.
Yeah, so I think the first question is, what is identity? And then we can move to digital. So identity is definitely not your ID card. So ID cards have a very clever name because by having the name ID card, people think that they might be identities, but they're not. So identity always starts with something we call identifier. And an identifier in my case would be, for example, my face. And my face is something that I definitely made myself. It wasn't given to me by a government or by a company or something. The same is true for my fingerprint or my signature, right? These are things which are naturally decentralized in the physical world already. And then this is not my identity. This is just something to identify me, right? And identity is much more. It is, for me, it is where I live, where I come from, what I have studied, the company I work for, that I can drive a car, and more things. And all these are gathered around me. And in the physical world, we normally use credentials to show those abilities and rights and properties of a person. And all those credentials are linked to an identifier. So, for example, my passport holds a picture of me, which links the credential to my identifier, right? So identifier plus credential builds identity. So there's a couple of identifiers, and then there's hundreds of credentials around them, which are always issued by trusted entities like governments, like universities, like companies. And those credentials, they are in my possession. They are basically in my drawer or in my wallet, and I take them out when I want to show them. And that's a fascinating model that we have there in the physical world. And we always have to take this as an example, and we shall, when we talk about digital identity, we shall not step back from that. Because the physical model that we have gives us a lot of freedom, a lot of privacy, and a lot of scalability. So it's a great model. And when we talk about digital identity, the first approach, which we started with the Web 2 basically in the 90s of the last century, or maybe in 2000 or so, was that we tried to establish digital identity with companies. So it's, for example, it's Facebook, which holds a lot of digital identities. But this is not as good as we had it in the physical world, because there's nothing decentralized about it. I don't hold my identity. I'm a number in a database somewhere in the Silicon Valley, which is far worse than having my own face, right? And then if Facebook starts adding credentials to that, then they hold the 100% of the power over my identity in the end. And this is something we have to work against. And so it's not my idea that we have to work against that. I think this is an idea which is like 6 years old or so. And this is why many companies and universities and so on gathered in the Decentralized Identity Foundation, not only small companies like us, but also IBM, Microsoft, and others gathered there to standardize actually how a decentralized identity, which meets the high standards of physical identity, can actually be established in the digital world. And this is where the standards like DID and verifiable credentials came out.
That's very good. So you're talking, you gave us a description what identity is and why identity should be decentralized, because Facebook has centralized everything and now they're using us as a product, they're using our identities, they're marketing to us, they're profiting from that, and I'm not profiting from that, right? You're not profiting from that. So talking about those decentralized identities, I think we all agree that a centralized pool of identities, what Facebook is holding, is bad. I don't think anybody, unless you work for Facebook, I don't think you will stand up and say, no, you're wrong. So, okay, so that we've established. Now, and we've established that decentralized identities are good. Now, the questions are, like, what are the risks that come with that, right? Because things are getting hacked left, right, and center. We decentralize everything, and then tomorrow I cannot find, my identity because it's like traveling all over the, I'm using very, very simplistic terms, but it's traveling all over the internet. So how do we protect ourselves from that? Or do you see that as a risk, or am I being too pessimistic?
I think it's absolutely, once you work more like in a practice, you see those risks. And I think one of the risks what you see in this decentralized approach is that, cybersecurity, which you mentioned. So secondly, I think one of the risks to have like mass adoption of this solution is interoperability, because still we have so many different blockchains, what we are using, and they do not talk to each other because languages, I can say, are so different. And if we want to have like the digital identity as a standardized like solution in general for digital economy in general, so we have to find the common dominator actually how those blockchains can talk to each other and understand. I think this is a huge risk, and to have this like mass adoption. And secondly, who is the owner and actually taking responsibility and manage those data? And there's this like sovereign control approach saying that I myself have to have full control of my data that I can share, and how to ensure it. So this, I think, that was.
Yes, no, absolutely. I agree with this, the risks that you have highlighted, and I was also going to add another consideration for the panel: the fact that perhaps not everybody have accessibility to, let's say, online data as part of this decentralized solution. Clearly there's a lot of individuals on the planet that don't have, they don't even have the ability to buy a laptop, or have access to the internet. So that, is something to think about, because if you're going to go for a decentralized approach, you need to ensure that there is sufficient, inclusivity, and that everybody can then basically access it and have control of their own data. But I think ultimately, my view is a more kind of, let's say, hybrid approach, perhaps not a completely decentralized solution, but maybe finding something that is a bit more, let's say, more balanced and gradual. Because again, as I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of, let's say, financial institutions, specifically in emerging market jurisdictions, where they follow a more traditional approach, and they still want to verify documentation in physical formats. Depending also on how the legal regimes in those jurisdictions operate. Not all courts are willing to accept digital documentation. That there are divergences, across the globe. So I think that there's quite a few things to think about, and I think it will take probably some time for a solution to be implemented.
And I like to always mention, we're all talking about smart contracts, automations, AI, machine learning, crypto, and all of that. But if you want to file a case in a Dubai court, which is just down the road, you have to have a physical document, an original document with an original signature, an original stamp signed by the director of the company, and you have to attach the license of the company that shows this person is the person who signed this document. I mean, this is just worlds apart, isn't it? Just worlds apart. Ingo, from the product point of view, can you explain to us how the digital identity would look like from the product point of view? And I'm not talking about digital identity like a digital copy, PDF copy of a passport, because that is still not acceptable by most of the banks. Forget about that. We're talking about the true digital identity, my digital footprint, which can, and where would it live as well? That's
first of all, maybe saying so, because it was mentioned that adoption needs that we agree on how we communicate. The good news is that this has been done. So there has been a lot of work in the last 6 years about standardizing DIDs and verifiable credentials, and they are now standardized by the W3C, which is the body which also gave us HTTP. So this standardization is done. So this communication can happen. So this is extremely good news, and it wasn't that big in the media. This is why I always like to mention that. So the standardization is there, and the adoption can start. So how does it look from a product point of view? From a product point of view, it is very, very similar to a wallet that you have in your pocket. So you will have, so you know all crypto wallets, right? Crypto wallets basically hold coins. The ID wallet or identity wallet will hold a little bit more. It will be capable of holding your decentralized identifier. It will be able to enable you to sign things, like you said with the Dubai court, so that I can actually digitally sign things, and it is able to hold credentials just like your physical wallet. So it will hold, of course, it will hold digital credentials. So it will hold maybe your passport later, but we don't start with the passport. I think we will start with ownership of social media accounts and stuff like that, which. And so these things are going first, and governments will come a little bit later, because governments always still think that they need to own the identifier, which is a wrong way, and they will need a couple of years to find that out. So we see a lot of initiatives from governments right now centralizing the identifier, which actually takes away the freedom from the people, which will probably not prevail. So it's just an identity wallet. It works like a crypto wallet, but it doesn't have the coins in it. It has your identity in it, and you control it. All the identifiers are on your computer, right? It's not floating around the internet. It is just on your computer. And this is the most secure thing that you can do, because decentralization makes automatic security, because it is not worth breaking into your computer. It is only worth breaking into Facebook, because there's billions of identities there. Your computer just holds one. So who is going to break into your computer? This is the same probability as somebody steals your wallet, right? Which normally doesn't happen when you walk around Dubai.
So the question then, that raises a very interesting question. When I fly back home to Switzerland, I have my Swiss ID, right? And it's issued by a federation, and the federation is all sorts of whole bunch of cantons. So they argue they're all decentralized, right? So they scan my ID, and then I can enter. How's that different? Because it's digital, it's scannable, it's in my wallet, literally. So how's that different from the identity that you are describing? What is this next step that you're talking about?
It is actually not very much different. So you still have an identifier on your Swiss passport. You have a picture of yourself, and with the identity wallet, you have the private key to something, which is a DID, which enables you to sign things and prove that you are actually this person. But proving that you are this person, it's not enough that you show your face, right? You can go anywhere and show your face and say, hey, it's me. You also have to have credentials. So the Swiss passport is actually a credential, which is then linked to this identifier. And this makes it powerful, because you have not only one, you have many of those, right? You have linked to your DID, you have your passport, but you also have your university degree and whatnot. So you have a lot of things which prove that you have an identity, and different things are needed in different situations. So if you apply for a new job, you might want to have your university degree to show. When you enter another country, you might want to have your identity card to show. And if you buy a bottle of something which is with age, you might want to prove your age, but proving your age can happen with many different ways. It can happen with your driver's license, it can happen with your ID card, it even can happen with your student card, which is issued by your university. So there's lots of things which we have in the physical world, and our task is to rebuild the possibilities that we had or that we already have in the physical world and make them available to the digital world. Otherwise, it just won't work.
Fantastic. So if we listen to product guys, if we listen to entrepreneurs, everything is fantastic and we should do it tomorrow. But surely, when you, as lawyers, when you hear that, surely all sorts of red flags popping up in your head. Surely all sorts of like, oh, hold on a second, we can't just like go full decentralization just yet. What are the other risks, Nicole, would you mention? What are the other risks? You talked about, inclusivity, but what else should we be worried about as lawyers?
Fraud. I'm going to highlight, clearly fraud, identity theft. These are some of the challenges also that, for example, crypto exchanges are facing, crypto asset managers, when you're doing your KYC, your AML processes, and it's just being able to, when you're relying on digital identities, is that how do you counteract the fraud risk specifically? So that's probably one of the big biggies that I can think of.
Which is quite a biggie, and as you all probably have the same experience, there are hundreds of fake social media accounts being created using your pictures, using your name, and your friends are being scammed and defrauded. I mean, that's nowadays my Instagram page is my identity, right? It has my face, it has my name, and it has my credentials. And people are stealing that, using that, and defrauding others for money, which is just it's a small scale, but for me, it's quite impactful because people send me emails how much money they lost on this, which of course talks to their intelligence levels.
This is exactly the problem of the Web 2. This is why we need decentralized identity, because Instagram is a centralized service. It's very, very easy to spoof. If you control your identity, then you can't spoof it anymore, and there's less fraud. And talking about KYC is a typical credential. We're working with companies which will issue KYC credentials in big scale, so trusted companies, not small blockchain company, but the big old companies, and they will issue credentials for KYC and AML, and that can be accepted by the exchanges and by banks and by anyone basically, because they're doing the right processes and they have a good name behind that, which can be trusted also by governments. And this is what but then this is just a credential, right? They're not. If you as an exchange meet your customer, then you are in direct talk with the customer, and the customer says, here's my credential, and you decide if you want to accept that. And if you trust the company which issued it, then you can trust that this person is actually this person. And another person, so if I go and try to make a KYC for you and then have a fake credential, this will not work because there's a big company behind that and they will check that I'm not you, and so I won't get your credential. And you can even lose your credential. You can send it to me. I can't use it because I don't have your DID to sign it. So it is much more secure than we have today.
Thank you, Ingo. One last point, another red flag that we can counteract the very, very, very positive Ingo story about digital identities. What are other things that you might be worried about? Very quickly, 1 minute.
I want to actually to close the banner on a positive experience also. So I'm coming from Latvia, and so we are like digitally very advanced country, and Estonia. So we have this digital ID already in a place in some part in government. So we can submit our court cases and everything digitally. We can do all over services. Even we can submit marriage requests digitally, so we don't need to go ourselves. So we try to be really very modern, and it shows that there is a potential. And there's also, this adoption.
But it's centralized, right? Because it's owned by the government. I can hack them. I mean, your neighbors just across the border are not very friendly neighbors. They can hack the database, steal every single identity in the world.
Now it's a new stage when they go to decentralize and saying that, So we don't want to keep your data. We want that you have your data yourself, because as our colleague also told, in this digital identity, you can store a lot of information, you know, about like my date of birth, my blood, my medical and education, whatever, all kind of data. And when I need to share with someone, it's always important how much of the data I need to share in each and particular case and for what purpose. And this is something, it's a unique solution to have everything, very important information about you in this digital identity. But the question, you know, how much I have to every time and to share for what purpose. You know, this is very important.
You go connect an electricity here in Dubai, you have to submit everything, including your grandmother's birth certificate, because, like, why would they need that, right? And if you want to close a DUA account, that's even worse. So thank you very much for participating. Thank you very much, Ingo, for tuning in. Thank you very much for very insightful explanation. Thank you, lady. It was very interesting.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone. And picture. Yeah. And it's always so heartbreaking to jump in and show like 5 and 2 and time out and you know, time is up, because it's so interesting, and this is one of the subjects that obviously is. But Crypto Granny needs coffee, and I think you too as well, or tea. So let's have a break.